it is session 5 of Torna Egeas' travels near Baldur's Gate. I have a whole lot of updates for session 5 today, lots of character updates. I'm going to save those to the end. I'll start with a recap of session 4, a few goal updates for Torna, then just kind of talk about what happened in session 5, and then I'll go to all of the character updates because, yeah, there were a lot. All right, so in session 4, basically, Torna and associates explored under the windmill, orphaned an owlbear cub, found Scratch the dog, disbelieved Auntie Ethel, and saw through an illusion of what I'm assuming is her swamp. Saw a dragon through telescope, got a contract to seek the artifact Night Song, and was asked by a tiefling leader to kill 3 goblins. Okay, so that was session 4. Now, one of the main things in session 4 that happened too was with Shadowheart. I'm going to cover the result of that, I guess, here in session 5 at the end when I go through all the characters. But Torna has an update for his motivation, and one of the things that he has realized already is that, you know, he's special, he's unique, he's the last of these pagan bards. But as a part of that, he really needs to protect his legacy. And so he's not just thinking about, oh, you know, I'm cool, I'm the center of all that's happening, which is maybe not exactly correct, but it's there. He's also thinking that he needs to actually go forth and make sure that he stays protected, especially as he realizes what Shadowheart possesses, which is this artifact, and also, you know, how good of a liar she is. But we'll get to that in a little bit as far as the details go. Our goals today for session 5 with Torna, number 1, were to explore the ancient temple, try and find Night Song. Number 2, go to the goblin camp or the swamp or the high road and basically make sure we level up so that we can get to those things. Okay, so moving on to what actually happened. Basically, the first thing that happened is Torna and associates went to the ancient temple. I could not find anywhere that I hadn't gone. There was actually one room. I grabbed a few magic items, but beyond that, I just could not find anywhere that I could possibly go to find this Night Song. Like I said, when I first explored it, I'd gone through the back entrance, and that's where I met Withers, and I had left the rest of the temple unexplored. However, now that I've gone through it, I just feel like I'm not missing anything, or maybe I am. I couldn't figure out anything. There was no other combat opportunities, so I decided to move on. From there, we went to the goblin camp, where the absolute believers are, and we explored that further. I didn't realize there was a kind of an upstairs in the back past the there's like a big iron cage where I found out spiders were lurking. So we moved past there, and we saw a whole lot that happened. First of all, where are my notes here? Okay, so first of all, we met Ragslin, one of the 3 goblin leaders. There's the priestess, there's Ragslin, and then there's Minertha, I think, the drow. Okay, so Ragslin was trying to do some sort of spell to revive a mind flayer and ask it questions. And we learned a lot. We kind of just walked up on this scene, and we learned a lot about what was happening because Ragslin was trying to get this spell to work so it could ask the mind flayer questions about a weapon that the mind flayer may or may not have had. Now, when Torna began talking to Ragslin, Ragslin began describing why he was frustrated that the spell wasn't working. However, he also told Torna that this weapon was captured by the Nautiloid ship, this Mind Flayer ship, excuse me. And both Torna and Shadowheart realized that Ragslin was talking about her artifact. Now, Ragslin is a hobgoblin, and he's level 5, and he's a true soul, one of the main leaders of the goblin camp and one of the main leaders of the Absolute. So Torna, not wanting Ragslin to actually succeed with this mind flayer and ask it the right questions, told Ragslin recognized that Torna was a true soul as well, and Torna said, hey, I can take over this spell if you want. So Torna cast the spell correctly. The mind flayer rose up, and I think Torna had 3 questions to ask. So Torna's first question is, who is the Absolute? Which was definitely not the right question to ask as far as like not arousing Ragslin his suspicion, but Torna didn't want to ask anything about the weapon itself. So the Mind Flayer said that the Absolute is absolute power and absolute unity. it happens when a circle of mind flayers is able to bring their powers together, or something like that. So the absolute is like this idea of power and unity from these really, really super intelligent, super powerful beings when they all band together. That's the absolute, and that's kind of what's guiding it. And it's the harmony that they're able to achieve. It actually sounds very druidic from what I was thinking. Then I asked how the Mind Flayer was killed. And this was the most interesting thing. The Mind Flayer said it was killed by pure darkness or something like that. And that's interesting because that is related to something Gale said both earlier and later in this session. So I'll get to that in a little bit. And then my last question was, I don't remember, something silly, just something unrelated to what Ragzlin was trying to find out. And the result of this is that Ragzlin got super suspicious at me because I took his spell, casted it appropriately, and just didn't ask any questions. He immediately called me out, told me I'm not a true soul, and was getting all heated about it. And I had to convince him and calm him down that, no, actually I am. Don't you remember, like, the tadpole thing connected, and you recognized me as a true soul. Like, we already did all that. And so he kind of backed down, but he also told me he had his eye on me, excuse me. And then he said, you need to prove you're a true soul, you need to go help Minerva, maybe? I can't remember her name, but that's the drow, one of the 3 leaders. And so I countered and said, I'm probably not going to do that. He's like, if you don't, then you're not a true soul. He kind of seems like a meathead. And I just said, fine, I'll do it, which I absolutely will not be doing. But I didn't want to have to worry about that, and combat there would have been a death sentence. So we were able to get out of that without any problems, but we learned a whole lot of what was happening. We explored more, found some other interesting things in Goblin Camp. Okay, so first of all, this place seems like it's set up for some interesting combat. So that has the wheels turning here for Torna. The Minerva's back in a room by herself. All right, she's level 5. She's a drow. However, she is in a room that has like a eye that is rotating around that seems like it's observing everything. And there's only one other goblin in there. So as far as like attacking this drow goes, it seems like it would be a slam dunk because you could just do it in the room, not let anyone out, and you'd be fine, except there's this magical eye in there that's kind of preventing that. The room that Ragzlin is in has a lot of goblins, but it also has a bunch of ladders leading up to the rafters, and you could potentially lay down some sort of trap. And I'm almost to the point where I'm wondering if I can bring... there's like barrels of oil that are often around in the environment. And I'm also wondering if I can just plop them down around him, climb up to the rafters and then just shoot a flaming arrow and just deal a crap ton of damage. So I'm thinking about things like that. It'd be a little cheesy to pile several barrels of oil next to Ragzlin and then do that because in, D&D terms or whatever in the setting, I don't think they would allow that, but it's a possibility. And then the priestess, who I've not seen yet, is off in her own room. However, there's like a locked door, but you can kind of get around it by jumping from one ledge to the next. And then her door is the next locked door. So she might be more secluded than the others. She also scares me because I haven't seen her yet. And I'm not exactly sure what's beyond that door. And I assume if we break the lock or pick her lock, that's going to immediately be seen as a hostile action. And, if there's 20 goblins behind that door, I'm in trouble. So there's that. Okay, so already Torna is kind of thinking like, okay, he's been tasked by the leader of the tieflings to kill these 3 goblin leaders. He's been tasked by the goblin leaders to go and talk to Minerva to join the assault on the goblins. And I haven't made up my mind what he's going to do with that, but I kind of think he's going to lay some sort of guerrilla siege onto this goblin camp relatively soon. And there's a little bit of that started happening at the end of the session. We also found, the room that Torna and Associates could jump to beyond this locked door. There's a hole in the wall to another room that has a locked door, and that is just absolutely full of barrels of oil. And so I'm not sure what it would be nice to be able to get to those, but there's just a lot of opportunities here in this goblin camp for a lot of combat. And so Torna's thinking about this, the wheels are turning, and he's trying to figure out, okay, how can I go kill these goblin leaders? It's all possible there. So after exploring a little bit more, we saw some spiders down in a pit. Torna decided that it was time to head back out. We hadn't leveled up yet because we hadn't found more combat, so we took the high road just for a little bit. We noticed that these hyenas were pretty low level, and so Torna took a few pot shots at one and killed it, but then a gnoll was birthed from it. It was a bloated hyena, and so the gnolls looked pretty beefy, so we ran away right away. So we went back to Moonhaven, and there the idea took hold in Torna's mind that he was definitely going to side with the tieflings and not the goblins. That's for sure is going to happen. Whether or not he's able to kill the goblin guard or the goblin leaders, we'll see. But the reason Torna is going to side with the goblins and with the tieflings and not the goblins is because he saw what the goblins did to Volo, and that is a very, very clear signal that if he sides with the goblins, it's unlikely that he's going to see what his place in goblin land and goblin culture that's going to live up to his name and his history. He needs to see a place in non-goblin culture, essentially. And so the tieflings are the part that he's going to side with, and he's not going back to the druid camp. That is, again, something he's unwilling to do after the whole Nettie situation in session 2. And so what Torna decided is, okay, he's not able to take on the goblin camp at this moment. However, Moonhaven is crawling with goblins, and they're pretty spread out, and that's a great place to start. And so the group started going around Moonhaven and just started picking off the groups one by one. They killed a gnoll, a bugbear. They saw in a big woodshed a bugbear and a troll doing some butt stuff, doing some dirty deeds, and they interrupted that and were able to. He was trying to actually talk his way out of it. Torna was not looking for combat there, but they got pretty frustrated at the interruption, and it ended up in combat. And so they were able to take them out. They were able to take out a group of 5 goblins on rooftops, and then they finally took out one more goblin. And Moonhaven is free from goblin influence, as far as I can tell. They also found the Whispering Caverns, which are very dangerous. There's a well that leads down to the Whispering Caverns, and then there is a basement of one of the buildings where they were able to find a crumbling wall that lead to the Whispering Caverns. And there's phase spiders down there and ettercaps, I think, all of which can be pretty dangerous. So they didn't spend too much time down there, but that's good to remember and maybe someplace to revisit in the future. Phase spiders are especially dangerous because of their mobility, especially tall things. I saw them walking around on webs up above, and having that kind of height advantage is really strong in combat. So not a great place to do combat. After clearing out Moonhaven, Torna went back to the goblin camp, and the way the goblin camp is situated is they already took out like the welcome entrance guard. And beyond that is like a small table with a few goblins, and then you go over a bridge, and that's where you get to the kind of the absolute cultists, or the cultists from the cult of the absolute. So they had already taken out the welcome guard. There was just 3 of them sitting around a table, so they took them out, and that leveled everybody up, except for Torna. Funnily, he has 2 more experience till he levels up to level 4. And they were pretty beat up by there at that point, and so they found a good spot on the edge of the goblin camp to take a rest, and that'll kind of set them up for next time. Let's see, I don't think I missed anything. No, that's it. So that brings us to characters. Holy cow, did a lot of things happen with the characters. I'm just going to kind of go through in order that I have my notes written down. First of all, this whole time, at the end of session 4, Shadowheart, I'm going to start with Shadowheart. Shadowheart dropped a bomb on Torna, and she showed how adept and good she is at lying. The whole point that Torna has been drawn to her, and he doesn't trust her, but relies on her a lot, is because he's been operating under the assumption that she's awful at lying this entire time. But after the devil Raphael visited, and Shadowheart was kind of playing with Torna a little bit, and then telling him these lies and deceit are the types of things that devils do, and also I'm taught that as a follower of Shar because we use it on the enemies of Shar. Alarm bells were just ringing in Torna's mind, and he realized that she's probably the most dangerous person of the entire group. And so Torna has two things that he needs to figure out. Number one, he needs to protect himself from her. She's incredibly dangerous. And it was funny because on their adventure, she just randomly stopped and started talking to him, just laying it on thick about like how, he's the most person she's ever been able to open up to, that she remembers. Ha 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 ha. She's so funny. And there's also a few other things she talked about. She opened up and shared more secrets, and I put that in quotes as I said the word secrets, that she wants to be a dark justiciar for Shar, which is like some probably very dangerous part of that religion. But she also shared one of the nicknames of Shar, and it was Night Song, which is very similar to or is the exact same. I don't know if I wrote that down right. Anyways, the nickname she gave Shar was very similar or the same as this weapon that we've been contracted to find out in Baldur's Gate. And now I'm kind of thinking that her artifact is the artifact that we've been contracted to find out from Baldur's Gate. I didn't make that connection till now. I'm slow sometimes. Anyways, so she's a liar. And Torna's going to keep her around because this artifact has protected them in the past. But he has his eyes on this artifact now because obviously Shar and Shadowheart want it, and apparently this wizard in Baldur's Gate that they have a contract for want it, and the goblins want it, and there's even a line of dialogue I saw that I did not choose, but apparently I could potentially feed the artifact to Gale. That would be interesting. But now Torna wants it because he's not quite sure what it does. But if it can protect people that much, and he needs to protect himself, and he definitely cannot trust Shadowheart. And so that's kind of what Torna's rolling around in his mind as well. Moving on to Lazial. Lazial, not a whole lot happened again. She did we had a short conversation. She did try to convince Torna that the druid is not going to be strong enough to heal everybody there. And she shared a little bit more about Githyanki culture, and they have these libraries with like an insane amount of knowledge, and she talked about how their goal is to continue growing those libraries, infinity upon infinity of knowledge, blah, 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 blah. It sounded great. And really, she seems like a bookworm. She said she studied hard back when she was learning to become a warrior or whatever. And I trust in what she's saying. She's probably like I've said for a long time, she's the only person I trust, but I don't trust her culture. I mean, it's just, she's totally blinded by the fact that I think that Githyanki would be so rigid in this circumstance. I can't imagine that they would just let a bunch of randos walk out of their Githyanki camp if they are cleansed, as she says, or purified. So I can't talk to her for that long, though, because she's a little bit too much. Okay, we're moving on to Gale. A lot happened with Gale. First of all, he pulled us aside at the beginning of our session and talked a little bit more in detail about what is going on with these artifacts that he consumes, because he got another one today and he said it barely helped. So he's eaten 3 different magical weapons that I've given him or consumed them, and he says it's barely helping with this hunger. So it turns out that in his youth, he was a weave prodigy, and the weave is kind of his view on how magic moves through things. I think it's a wizard and sorcerer view. And he was such a high prodigy, and he had such a command of the weave that the Lady of Mysteries, Mystara herself, Mystara, he ended up like meeting her, and then they became lovers. And so he used to be a real big deal because he was all about this woman. Torna pushed a little bit deeper and said, okay, what's going on? That doesn't really make sense. So Gale went way back in history, said at some point there was a wizard in a flying tower that was trying to take over what the Lady of Mysteries did or something like that. He lost this battle. His tower fell, his realm, Netheril, crashed, and he became turned to stone. He apparently, though, sealed some of this weave away that the Lady of Mysteries could not actually get to. And so Gale, this young prodigy who's sleeping with the Lady of Mysteries, just wanted more power. He's like, can you give me some more power? And she's like, no, you should be satisfied with what you have. And he said, yeah, I probably should have been. And I was like, yeah, you should have been. But he wasn't. And he wanted more, and he wanted more from the Lady of Mysteries. And so he said the best way to do that was to go figure out this legend. And so he apparently went and found the book that showed how this weave chunk was locked away, and or where it was, or maybe it was in this book. And he was able to open the book and read it. And then this little piece of the weave that had been locked away attacked him and leapt into him. And it was some sort of blackness or darkness that was pure hunger. And that's now a part of him. And that's why he has to consume these magical artifacts. So there's a connection here, because the mind flayer that died said it was killed by pure darkness, which makes me think that maybe Gale killed that mind flayer. I guess we'll see, though. Anyways, it's a very long story. I kind of think he's lying, not outright, but in some ways. I mean, it does seem really far-fetched, everything he said. But, you know, to be honest, there's a lot of things that are far-fetched here. And later in camp, he offers me to show me what it's like to reach into the weave together. Torna said no thanks, because, again, he doesn't trust Gale. And there's a part of me that thinks he's going to want to transfer that hunger part of the weave into Torna, and I would like to avoid that if possible. And so I didn't go see what the weave looks like, but I'll need to keep an eye on Gale as well, because he said, the biggest, most important thing, I totally forgot that, if he's not fed, he could erupt, and he would take out a city as big as, what city did he say? I can't remember. Waterdeep. A city as big as Waterdeep. So of course, everybody in the party was not happy to hear that. Lazial said he needs to be kicked out immediately. Gale even offered to run off and get as far away as he could until it happened. And I was like, bullshit, dude. You're not just going to run off and wait for your body to explode. You're going to go do something. And then Shadowheart was ambivalent. She said, I could see it both ways. I'm okay with either decision. I was like, wow, thanks, Shadowheart. So anyways, that was... And actually, that was kind of interesting from Shadowheart, now that I think about it, because she has this magical artifact that he could totally consume. I don't know if she's made that connection yet, or she's got her own game she's playing. I don't trust her. Anyways, Gale is a ticking time bomb, basically. And I'll need to... There's no long-term solution there at this point, which I'll need to figure out. Maybe I do need to visit the Weave with him just to get more information. Anyways, on to Asterion. First time I met him, guess what I said? I said, I think this person's a vampire. Guess what? Asterion's a vampire. All right. He's actually a vampire. At the beginning of the session, I hadn't actually done the long rest yet, so I clicked around long rest, and he tried drinking my blood. So it was weird, though, because he crept off in that temple earlier, and this is probably what he was doing. He talked about how he is able to stop his hunger by drinking the blood of four-legged animals, or sometimes kobolds. And but this time he came up to drink my blood, and he basically talked a little bit about what that hunger is like to need to drink blood. It was clear that he was telling half truths, and this has been Asterion's thing the whole time, is that he's just not completely truthful. And my guess is that he wanted some sort of tadpole parasite magic from me, and that he's thinking, if I drink the blood of one of our party members who has this parasite, then I will get more power. And if you remember back when the Dream Visitor came to visit us and said, you need to get more power from these tadpoles, he was the only one who said outright, yes, I would like more power. And so I could see him trying to go out and get that more power, trying to get it from Torna, being one of those things. Now, Torna had more questions near the end of camp, and one of those was, how are you staying alive in the sunlight? And Asterion said that something is keeping him alive, the same way he can cross rivers or go into homes uninvited, similar to how these tadpoles are not attacking us. It's probably the Dream Visitor, but who knows? The group also learns he's a vampire the next morning, by the way. Of course, Lazial, not super happy about it, but also at the same time, she's a little understanding in that everyone here is kind of messed up in some way or another, and really, who cares? It's not the biggest problem right now. Gale sees is not super happy about it, but again, Shadowheart, oddly okay with it. So something's up with her. And then we find out a little bit more about Asterion's backstory and how he was indeed a spawn to one of the vampire families, the Czar family, Szarr maybe. And he had some comments earlier about how people in power like to play games when they've already know they've won. And I think that's what this is referring to as the time when he was a vampire spawn for this family. And I think that rounds out all of our character updates for session 5. Withers, didn't really talk to him. And Volo, I think there's a way I can unlock Volo being a merchant for me, because that's what it looks like on the map. But the only dialogue I have left is to tell him that I have the Mind Flayer parasite inside of me, and I don't know if I want to do that yet. So I'll have to weigh that out. So that's session 5. Leveled up mostly. The group is level 4 except for Torna. And so next combat he'll be level 4. And we're probably going to be going to the swamp next. I would like to at least beat those red caps and explore the swamp a little bit more. The other area to explore would be up the high road, but I think I can take out the red caps maybe a little bit easier now that everybody is level 4. So that's the plan. That should be a good time. And there's a lot of thinking to do because, the short term is going to be, like I said, the swamp, but long term, Torna's got to figure out how is he going to handle this this conflict between the druids, the tieflings, and the goblins. He's probably going to take out the goblins, as well as how is he going to handle this Shadowheart conflict with this artifact, because he can't trust her, and it's a really strong artifact, and that would, there's songs, the old bards, there's songs of trickery, there's songs of this, songs of that. And so that may impact how he levels up to level 4 and being able to maybe even do some multi-classing. So we'll see. So that's everything. I'll be back when we get to session 6 and find out what happened there. Oh, yeah, one last thing. I think I made an incorrect connection earlier. The Dream Visitor definitely looked like a drow elf. But that's not the same drow, I don't think, as the goblin leader. So I think they're just two different ones, but I think for a while I was making the connection that they were the same, which now doesn't make sense because the Dream Visitor was doing all sorts of high-level magic, and this goblin leader is hanging out in a goblin camp and only level 5. So who knows? I don't think they're the same person, but that was an incorrect connection I made earlier. All right, on to session 6 next time. Next time with Torna Egeas. The answer is no. The game lets you make bad decisions, and there's no way Torna's letting Volo stick a needle